Hello, everyone. We're less than 24 hours away from the global launch of the new Lord of Hatred Diablo IV expansion. And on Friday, they released a lot of new information, basically a deep dive into all the new stuff that's coming to the game and the expansion, as well as things that are just getting updated about the base game. So you don't have to buy the expansion to partake in the update. It's going to be transformative for anybody, regardless of what version that you have. Um, and like I said, I watched or I think it was on Thursday, actually. It was Thursday or Friday. They did a big reveal of basically all of the new things that are coming to the expansion, as well as some IP stuff, some marketing stuff, which I'm usually kind of put off by, but in this case, it makes me a little bit more excited because I think that the team over at Blizzard, everybody working on Diablo 4, I think they're extremely confident about what they're delivering here. They have at the beginning, I found this really funny, actually. They had like that guy like playing the heavy metal stuff. It was like basically like early 2000s, kind of like a throwback for me just to see that kind of like promotional material for the game. They know their fan base, they know what kind of music people are listening to that play their games. So I thought that was I thought it was cool, but it also I found it kind of humorous. But they are extremely confident. Korn is even getting involved. They're having, they're making music for the game. So I really think that all of these things are pointing to the fact that Blizzard is extremely confident in what they're going to be delivering in this new expansion. And everything that I saw in the video makes me extremely excited. I made a couple of videos talking about what I was hoping war plans and the skill tree were going to, what kind of influence they were going to have on the game. And I think everything that I heard, at least the little tidbits of information, it was the most in depth they went thus far, talking about the systems. But there's still a lot more to discover, which I like. Honestly, I wouldn't like it if they just kind of displayed everything and then all of the surprises got ruined before we could discover any of it. But one thing that they mentioned, which is kind of what I want to talk about in this video, it's kind of like it's kind of recapping what they went over, as well as me. Just honestly, I'm just going to be going to their website, basically detailing everything. I've read through this a few times. I've also watched over their video a few times, but I honestly think that their site, they detail everything pretty in depth, and I'm going to leave a link below for people to just go directly to this link so they can read up on it themselves. Obviously, I'm not going to go through everything here. It's quite a lot, but I'm going to be touching on what I think, what I was leading up to this expansion, what I was kind of the most concerned about with them changing, or at least what I was the most hopeful about. Like what were these new systems going to be introducing? So the way Blizzard has this laid out on their site is they have links here for features that are going to be for every player, and then you have your expansion details here. So I'm going to go over the things that are just coming to the base game without the expansion. So this is the thing that that I talked about earlier, and kind of one of the major selling points of the new expansion and this new update was the skill tree rework. Everybody since the launch essentially said that you haven't really had too much control over how your character behaves or acts within the game. It was too gear dependent, which your power level should be influenced by your gear, in my opinion, but I don't think that it should be influencing how you play as much. Like the systems that were it was just too baked into the gear. Like if you wanted to play a certain theme of an ability for a class, you had to find gear that would enable that theme. I think that it was ultimately the best decision for them to kind of take that out as much as they could and just put it into the skill tree. Now, also from what I've seen in their showcase, it hasn't been just them recycling, aspects from gear and then just throwing it into the skill tree and then just saying like, all right, now it's in the skill tree and now the items are just stats. It doesn't seem to be the case. I think from what some of the stuff in the expansion is a little bit different, but it's not completely the case. There are still probably going to be some gear pieces that will further influence your skills, which I think is okay. And it's how that works in every single other ARPG and in earlier Diablos. There are pieces of gear that will make your skills do something different, or will just make how you interact with engaging in combat different. So overall, I think what they've decided on, I think the the end result seems to be kind of what I was hoping for. But before I ramble on, before even getting to like the first point, um, you know, basically everything that I just said, it's all going to be detailed here. But you're going to have um, your well, here we go. There's a couple of specific changes. This is going to be more specific. They detailed in the video that the druid and the necromancer were going to kind of have a little bit more. They have their own sections, kind of detailing some things because they have a little bit different of a skill tree than the other classes. Basically, with druid, whenever you're selecting a skill, you're now going to be able to choose what form you're taking whenever you do the skill. I think that's a great change. I think that's going to open up a lot of different build crafting options. But basically, also what I had covered previously in the other video, and something that they went over here is just the different customization options that you're getting now, and these different nodes here that you can do to further customize it. They haven't posted all of their trees to show everybody exactly what options we're all going to have, but they did show some examples. And druid, you can select your forms whenever you're choosing a skill that you want to play with. I think that's a fantastic change. Necromancers, the you're getting points that you can put specifically into skeleton warriors and skeletal mages. Like they're getting their own skills, and then the Book of the Dead is a little bit different now. You can choose the sacrifice bonus, but it's not making it to where you can't sacrifice, skeletons or whatever, skeletal mages or skeletal warriors. It's not, you don't have to sacrifice the ability to even have them. I think you can have fewer of them, and then you can buff them up into one, really powerful minion. Basically, they were kind of just like flexing in the showcase, just like, hey, like look at all this cool stuff that we brought in. I think that was really cool. Honestly, everything that they showed looked really awesome. Barbarian looked cool. There was some stuff that they had there showcasing like having the ancients like come in with you whenever you're performing abilities, and instead of like using it as like your ultimate ability and then having it be like a timed thing. So basically just some extra customization options there. I'm curious to see exactly if there are going to be any classes that kind of feel like they didn't get as much love as other classes. I do think that their intent was to kind of spread the love between all of the existing classes. I mean, there's no doubt that the paladin and the warlock are probably going to feel the most fresh. But I'm excited to see what the old classes feel like. Honestly, I think I've been thinking about which class I'm going to do, and I'm kind of having a hard time deciding because, based, depending on what the options are, I might not go with the warlock. And I know most people are going to be starting as a warlock, but I might go as like a barbarian. That's kind of like my roots. It's kind of like the play style I enjoy the most. So I may launch as a barb and see what we have there. But yeah, basically to summarize, the skill tree, I do think, based off of what I've seen, based off of what just the little stuff that they're even detailing here on the website, I think that it's pretty transformative. And my previous video talking about kind of what I was thinking about the skill tree, like, is it going to be transformative? Like, is it going to enable different play styles? Is there going to be specific content that you'll build your character for? Um, Based off of what they've shown, and even furthermore in like the itemization of some of the stuff coming to the expansion itself, not the base game, I think that that's most definitely the case. Here, the loot filter, not really much to say about the loot filter. It works as any other standard built-in loot filter for any of the other games. It's really similar to Last Epoch's loot filter. You just add rules and conditions. You can add like highlight colors to items that you want to um, pop out in the environment. I think it's a great change, especially with the itemization changes they're making. So they are especially, and this is going to be expansion only, not base game, but the Herodric Cube and the crafting option in the expansion, um, blue and yellow items are going to continue to drop now into torment tiers because of the crafting system. I mean, it's kind of just like a necessary thing they had to do. It's like, if they were auto salvaging, blue and yellow and normal items whenever you get into torment tiers, it would kind of like defeat the whole purpose of the crafting system. I'd seen some discourse about it, people being confused about that change, but it's kind of just like one of those things that it has to work that way because of the crafting system that they're putting in place. If you're interested in this, I'm not going to go super in depth about the loot filter. I don't really think there's much to say about it. It's basically exactly how Last Epoch's loot filter works, maybe a little bit less functionality, maybe some more functionality in other areas. If you're curious about that, like I said, I'm going to have a link here for you to access and kind of read over that for yourself. So level cap is increasing and difficulty tier is going up. Something that they were showcasing in the video itself, from Torment to Torment, before it was kind of just like a blanket, like increase in legendaries versus, and chance for ancestral items to ancestral legendaries and mythic uniques to drop as you went from Torment 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then I noticed in the showcase when it was going from like 6, 7, it was like specific items. It was like, more relics will drop or more set items will drop or something like that. So they're adding a little bit of an incentive there to actually climb the difficulty ceiling, because there's like specific things that are going to get tied to the torment tiers. I think that's a good change, because I think that just the blanket, like everything is higher tier now. Like everything is a higher rate of drop, of ancestral uniques and ancestral items and mythic uniques. I think it can kind of feel boring after a while, because you kind of just start and you're like, okay, I'm just going to get more of the good stuff as I go on. It's a reason to do it, but I think adding a little bit of nuance there and a little bit of specificity is nice. Item rarity upgrades. So basically, common magic rare items can be used as crafting bases. You can add affixes. I believe they said you can remove them as well. There's like specific currencies you can use to remove them, and that's the reason that common, magic, and rare are going to be continuing to drop as you climb into torment. Also, another cool thing here is that a rare item, which this makes complete sense with what they've introduced now with the Roger Cube. A rare item can have a greater affix on it, which is cool. It just gives you a reason to get excited about a rare item dropping. It gives you more. Before you were just kind of like, why am I even picking up legendary items? There's just a certain point where you were just only looking for specific ancestral, items. And now it's like, okay, like I can get excited when a blue item maybe even more excited if a blue item drops with an ancestral affix, because, the crafting system there may make more sense, like in Path of Exile, blue items with, tier 1 capped out, and a capped out affix on a blue item is like worth more than if it's capped out on a yellow item, because you have more potential to make the item exactly what you want it to be. So I think the crafting system, I think is going to add a lot of dopamine hits for people in the game, because it's like you're not just looking for that one aspect to make your build. You're like, oh, I have like a whole world of opportunity now, because I can find a yellow item with something and then craft it up and make it, a god tier item or something. Here's an interesting thing: damage multipliers to stack additively with themselves, but still count as multiplicative damage. I think from what I was looking at, some of the numbers, I think I'd see, what does that say? X 25% all damage multiplier. It seems like a pretty big number. I'd seen some of the numbers be like 2 or 3 or 4. 25 seems pretty big. I don't quite understand exactly what they're saying with the math here. I will have to maybe when it comes out and somebody smarter than me will be able to explain it, and I'll be able to explain it to everybody else. But it seems like it's not as crazy as some of the other damage multipliers that they've implemented in the past. This is one of the more exciting things that I saw here. This is another thing that kind of adds to that chase when you're getting an item. They have there's a change coming to unique specifically when they're dropping. When the uniques drop, beforehand they had their specific set. So I don't remember what Azure Wrath had before, but here you can see 157 weapon damage, 180 intelligence, 632 life on hit, times 10% cold damage multiplier. But then you can see here it has intelligence, it has life, and then it has life on kill. So it has 2 different affixes than what this other one has. So it looks like this first one has remained stagnant. I don't know if there's just like a stagnant affix on all of them, but it just gives you more of a reason to actually look for these items, because another problem was the uniques weren't as transferable between certain builds, because you would get a unique that had like a cool effect. After freeze expires, enemies explode for 120% of the damage you dealt to them while frozen. That actually seems kind of cool. But then it would just have like a bunch of garbage affixes on it that you built wouldn't use. But now with this, critical strike damage multiplier, that seems pretty good. Cold damage over time multiplier, getting critical strike, and that seems like a pretty good weapon. So now you actually are going to be looking. You have this effect that you're always going to get, but now you can actually hunt for a specific affix on the weapon that you need. So just another thing that they're adding to actually chase for. Just a quality of life thing, a map overlay. I am a massive fan of this. I always play with a map overlay in my ARPGs. Um, I do turn it off. Like I find myself like kind of just toggling back and forth between it because I like to see the game that I'm playing, but I also like to know where I'm going because I hate getting like running into a wall like when I'm just trying to do a thing and then like I have to like look in the corner or I have to pull up the map. So a map overlay is a really welcome change for me. And they've added a lot of things that I haven't really seen in other RPGs with the map overlay. Like they have the opacity filter, so you can. That's going to be huge for me because I may just leave it up constantly, but just have like the opacity where it's barely visible, and as long as I can see kind of a general idea, I can have like the best of both worlds where I don't have to like not know where I'm going, but also, um, you know, be able to actually enjoy the game instead of just having a map in the middle of the screen. Um, and then here's another option. You can just add the path tracing. Maybe that is actually probably the better, best of both worlds situation. Just set your marker, turn your map off, and then just go there. It's a cool change. So basically, this is just going over like some of the different different ways that you can start in the new season. So with that being said, that's the base game. Those are the changes coming to the base game. Loot filter skills, itemization. Probably some other stuff maybe that I didn't mention there, or maybe some stuff they didn't bring up. So now I just want to go over the actual expansion itself. So you have the new campaign, obviously. You have the two new classes, Warlock, Paladin. Paladin's been out. Paladin's cool. I actually may start a Paladin. I really like the play style of the Paladin. The Warlock also looks really cool. I know a lot of people are excited about that. The new region looks really cool. I didn't go into really any depth about that. I was going over just like game mechanics and system things, but the region itself looks really cool to me. I like the bright colored thing. I do like the dark theme. Obviously, it's a Diablo game. You kind of need that. You need like the dark dungeon experience, but being in the swamps and for the past year in Kurast and just the other areas of the game. There's no like really lively feeling areas. Like the port city kind of feels lively, but like this area feels lively, and I think it kind of fits with the theme of the campaign as well. I just a nice just a really nice landscape. I'm excited about that. I'm actually a person that gets I get almost like I almost get like physically sick sometimes if I look at like the same color palette too much, or if there's like a certain combination of the color palette in these games. Like if I don't know exactly how to describe it. I know that I could play this though, this in that environment and not get that feeling is the best way I can describe it. There's certain things I can just see it and I'm just like, man, that's gonna make me sick after a while. But then like Scovos, I see that and I'm like, that's super exciting. Like I'm not gonna get sick. So Harager Cube, that's the crafting system that they're adding. I talked a little bit about that earlier. The talisman I did not talk about. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that here in a second, just because I think that that's going to play more into like the skill system and the even the in-game system, just like the item chasing and like the specifying what your build does kind of thing. Bonus skill variants. Let's see. Interesting. So I'm wondering if the bonus skill variance is not going to be part of some of the base game. They're making a major system and itemization updates. Maybe that is just part of it. And now I do think that Warplanes is an expansion only feature. Echoing Hatred, it's like a new in-game activity. It's supposed to be a rare encounter, kind of just like you're pushing for something. And then fishing, just a nice little pastime activity that you can do. I'll probably be doing it, honestly. I'm kind of a sucker for stuff like that. Let's see. So campaign. I mean, I like the lore and stuff. Obviously, I'm kind of just passively into it. I don't get super into it. But everything that I've seen so far, based off of some of the reviews of people that have had early access, they say that the new campaign is a lot better than the previous one, which I honestly didn't have much of an issue with the previous one, but if it's better, then that's cool. So new region, kind of went over that a second ago. Scovos looks great. War plans, basically kind of what I talked about in my other video with war plans. It kind of seems like that's exactly what they're going for. Just a customizable option of how you do your end game. You pick whatever activity you want to do that builds up basically reputation for said activity. And then you can specify, how that activity operates. You can add layer bosses that ambush you in the pit. You can, it's customizable. So if you don't really like the idea of a layer boss randomly ambushing you, or maybe your build's not good enough to handle it, or more likely Blizzard doesn't tune it properly and they jump in and just one shot you, turn it off. And you don't have to do it. You can opt for a better option, and then maybe they'll fix it, or maybe you'll get stronger. But yeah, all that stuff here. You pick your activity. It kind of goes down this chain, and then at the end, you go back to the chest and Scovos, and then you get a reward for it. So adds a little bit of structure to the game, kind of like something to look forward to after a long play session. Maybe, because it can feel monotonous whenever you're just grinding the one activity. It's like, okay, like I can grind these activities, but there's an extra thing that I have to look forward to. I think that's nice just in and of itself, but obviously the added like meta progression, I think is gonna go a long way as well. So fishing, they were really like in the video, they showed like the fishing, just kind of like, just like it's like a passive thing in the video, but they were really hyping up like some of the like secrets that you can find. So I think they're like trying to get people to interact with it, because just like throwing that little tidbit out there, like, ooh, like what will you find? It better be something good, because like if I'm fishing for like an hour and like nothing cool happens, like I might be upset. But obviously, I don't know. I mean, like fishing, it's supposed to be a pastime thing, so I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong about that, but I think that some people, when they'll see like, oh, something cool might happen, they might be like sitting there, just like, well, when's the cool thing gonna happen? Just interact with it. I would just say, if like, just interact with it. If you see someone fishing, maybe just jump out, fish with them, have a chat, and don't hope for anything good to happen. Just maybe maybe just use it as it seems to be intended, as just like a passive social feature. So I talked a little bit about the itemization updates earlier. I think that those are going to be pretty cool, pretty transformative. Probably one of the biggest transformative things about the update itself. But the talisman looks really exciting. So I think this is an example of an in-game talisman, because in the presentation they talk about the talismans. You get introduced to the talisman early on in your leveling process if you have the expansion, and they said that the talisman was going to be class agnostic, meaning that your talisman and your relics and your set charms and stuff that you get are just going to be applied globally to everybody. or to every class. Like it's not going to require that you know have a specific class to utilize the set charms and the relics. But then later in the game, like when you get to tournament tiers, they're going to be more rare, and they are going to be class specific. And I think that's actually a cool change. It's just like you bake you bake a lot of the customization into the skill tree, something that you can interact with early in the game, and then later on in the game you have an extra cool thing, an extra layer of customization that you can chase after. And I think that's kind of what they're going for here. And one thing that they just kept they kept talking about, the thing that they were excited about. They were like, what are you excited for players to look at? And they were like, we're excited to see what kind of builds people cook up. And that was a really, really, really good thing for me to hear, because that's kind of what my whole problem with the game has been. It's just like there's not really any interesting things for me to do with the current builds. Like each class has like 10 or 15 different builds that they can do. And, when you compare with other modern ARPGs, you can take a class and you could do all kinds of crazy stuff with it. Now in the older games like Diablo 2, I mean, you do kind of have like a set path that you go on, but it's an older game. It has its own charm, and it kind of has its own feel to it. Now, I mean, there is some some customization there, and even more so. And even in Diablo 2, there is even slightly more customization than what the pre Lord of Hatred Diablo 4's customization had. Because I mean, you could use, and there were class specific weapons, but everybody could almost use every single weapon. And you could come up with weird little builds here and there. They probably wouldn't be any good, but you kind of had a little bit of an option there. But here's an example of like this in-game charm. Summon a bear companion that deals a certain amount of damage. Cast battle roar, increasing the damage of all companions by 60% for 10 seconds. You have 3 set bonus. You get 30% of damage you take is split between you and your bear companion. When you and your bear companion becomes injured, your bear companion casts debilitating roars on enemies and fully heals. So, looks like there's a set charm for people that are like going for like a companion-based druid build. Like that's just cool. It's just like a cool thing to get excited about. I'm super stoked about the cube. I'm super stoked about all the itemization skill tree updates. The thing that I was the most worried about, like, is this going to feel fun at all? Like, how impactful is this going to be? Everything that I'm seeing is telling me like this is something to get excited about. Herodric Cube. This is going to be another thing that plays into your itemization and your journey. You can craft an item from a base item that you find. I'm curious to see what the tiers of base items are going to be like, because it's like, is a blue item going to be? Can I find a blue item when I'm level 5 and just keep it and just keep crafting on it? Because I don't really like the idea of that. I more like the idea of like I think they actually did explain this already. I think it's going to still have like the item power influence on it. So if it's like a greater affix blue item, then it'll be like an 800 or 900 power level, whatever that cap is now. And then, so I think there's still a reason there, because I was playing, I've been playing Diablo 2 leading up to this, and I've been thinking like, what is the thing missing from the current game? And I kind of mentioned this earlier, but I was playing Diablo 2 earlier today. I've been like, I had made a solo self-found barbarian and was just getting shit on. So I got upset and then made a sorceress, and I've just been dog walking Mephisto like over 100 times. But one of the things that I noticed when I was playing the game was I was getting excited about everything that was dropping. It was like, it wasn't even specific to my build or anything that I was like as the sorceress. Like I'm hunting for a specific item. I'm trying to finish out my Tal Rasha set, but I get excited when I see a white um, or a gray colossal blade. I can't remember. Colossal glaive, I think, is what it's called. When I see that drop on the ground, that's not something the sorcerers use. That's something my mercenary uses. But if I pick it up, it may be ethereal. It may have 4 sockets. It may have all these cool things. There's just a sense of like things to get excited about. Like when you see something hit the ground, like, oh my God, that could be the best thing in the world. And I think that they're going in that direction, which is what makes me the most excited. And that's kind of plays into this Harager cube, and they had that in Diablo 2. They did have they technically have a crafting system now, but it just doesn't feel that great. Um, you know, but you can get excited about a blue item dropping instead of just looking for that same color, gray, purple, orange, and like that's the only things you get excited about. This is like adding a layer of excitement to the game. It's like you can get excited about all. It's going to sound silly, but you can get excited about all these new colors on the ground. But it means that they can have new possibilities. When you see like when you're killing Mephisto and you see that green amulet drop on the ground, you're like, that could be a Tal Rasha's amulet, or it could be like the 15th. What's that one? I've tried to erase it from my mind because I've gotten it so many times. But man, just a ton of stuff that's come. The gym. This is kind of the thing that's tagged on to the end, but I'm actually excited about this too because it's like, God, gyms were just useless before. Like, your weapon gyms were just useless. Like the rubies, like they were just stats, and it looks like they said they've added new tiers and a little bit of new flavor to them. So I think that's good because it's just like, it's just a chore, and one of the things they were talking about in the game is like, we're trying to get rid of things that just feel like chores, and, in like the potion thing, I think the potion thing, they talked specifically about the potions. They're like, we're just getting rid of potions and we're just increasing the experience. In the context of Diablo 4, that 100% makes sense because, if you forgot to do it, you would be like, fuck, like I forgot to drink my potions for an XP boost. It's just a thing that you had to do. And it was just a chore. In games like Diablo 2, you have to go out, you have to stock up on potions. You have to like make sure that you're ready. Like the things that you interact with in the game are things that are going to take you through the game. Like you have to know how these things work. And, these little tasks that they make you do to just like kind of like optimize your experience or your leveling process. Like it doesn't feel good. So I think that was another good change. There's so many things to talk about here with all the stuff they talked about. I'm late getting this video out because I was just sitting here. I'm like, I don't even know how I'm going to get all of this into one video. And like, the game is coming out soon. So like, what do I even talk about? Because there's so much. I think to sum everything up, I'm just going to try to get a cooler end screen here. Okay, that looks pretty cool. I think to sum it up, how am I feeling about the game? Am I excited? And the answer to that is yes, very much so. I think it's going to be really good, honestly. And I'm not going to feel let down if it's not everything I wanted it to be. But it's just like it looks good. And I think it's something that people should be excited about. Whether or not you don't even have to buy it to even engage with some of the new stuff. If you already have the game, you can log in and try some of the new stuff out. I think it's something to be excited about. I think people should check it out again. If you like this type of game, if you've played Diablo 4 before and liked any aspect of it, I think now is a good time to come back and try it out. So gonna sign off here. I'd love to hear everybody's thoughts and if people are excited, or if people are still unsure. I'd love to have a discussion with people in the comments. But yeah, I hope to see you guys tomorrow whenever it launches. Take it easy.